they're immediately being thrown into this huge Avengers Doomsday, this huge like culmination level event. All right, our next question comes to us from channel member Angel Manfredy. The Thing is my all-time favorite hero. That blend of fierce loyalty, indomitable will, and Bronx everyman personality just do it for me. He didn't get to truly shine in Fantastic Four First Steps. With Fantastic Four 2 and Inevitability, what do you think the Russos might do to capture his best qualities and make him a more appealing character? Well, thank you so much for the question. Thank you for being a channel member. I loved the Ben Grimm, The Thing that we saw in First Steps. I thought he was very appealing, and I thought that they did him perfectly, really. Just to your point, we didn't get enough of him, I think was my problem with it. I'm someone who, overall enjoyed Fantastic Four First Steps, but I've also been very critical of it because had this movie not been absolutely butchered in the editing room, it would actually be a really good movie. I think it was in desperate need of some breathing room, really. They cut that movie to shreds because they were trying so damn hard to play it so super safe because they knew how important it was to get it right, especially a Fantastic Four movie, because there had really basically never been a great one. And really, there still hasn't been. Now, while they did get it right in terms of, I think, the look and the feel and really everything, the characters, they handled them very well. No one scene in that movie, I think, is a bad scene. But as a whole, the movie was lacking, I think, about 20 to maybe even on the high end 40 minutes worth of more time like with these characters and for the story. The whole movie just kind of felt like a fucking montage sequence. Like it always felt like we were just jumping like month to month to month, like at this rapid pace. It just went way too fast, in my opinion. And this rapid pace for these characters in that movie, it's about to become a recurring theme for them in this saga because, God, the post-credit scene already jumped forward like, what, 6 years, 5 years, something like that? Their first introduction to the MCU was this movie, and now they're immediately being thrown into this huge Avengers Doomsday, this huge like culmination level event. Now, part of this rapid pace that I'm talking about that's really burdening the Fantastic Four, really, this new Fantastic Four, it resulted, I think, in Ben Grimm totally being like sidebarred and not getting near the time and attention that character deserved. And I don't mean like we need him like moping around being sad that he's a rock now. I think they handled that bit perfectly with just that one shot of him looking at the TV, seeing himself before he became the Thing on the TV, and then it turns off and he sees his reflection as the Thing, and we see that sad look on his face. It was perfect. So my problem isn't with that aspect of it. But what I did want to see more of was just a little bit more time with like Ben and the Rachel character, and just more moments with Ben and Johnny and Ben and Reed and Ben and Sue, and all of which, we got those things, but just not nearly enough of it. And here's where it gets frustrating, I think, for like the future of this Fantastic Four franchise within a franchise. It's that, and this is really the case for all MCU films, is that we can never really have like proper sequels or proper trilogies because this is an interconnected universe of interconnected stories where we see the characters show up in other projects before we see them show up in the sequel to their own solo project. So like the Thor trilogy, the Captain America trilogy, those aren't really trilogies. Like when I hear the debate of, oh, what's the best comic book trilogy of all time? And it usually comes down to either Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy or the Captain America trilogy. And I'm always hesitant to give it to Cap because how can you call that a trilogy when you have to have seen so many other movies to even watch that trilogy? You can't watch the Thor trilogy or the Cap trilogy without having seen the Avengers movies that came in between. And don't get me wrong, I like the interconnectivity of the MCU, but there is a give and take. And proper trilogies is one of the gives for the MCU. And that's okay because we get this great interconnected story. But like even take the Guardians trilogy, which feels, I'd say it feels the most secluded of any trilogy in the wider MCU. But even it cannot be watched without having seen Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. If you watch Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and then watch Guardians of the Galaxy 3, you're going to be like, what the fuck is happening? So Fantastic Four, it's falling into this same problem as well. And we'll never really get a true sequel to Fantastic Four First Steps because Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars will both be such crucial pieces to this family's overall story. And we're going to see like the entire multiverse reset before we get Fantastic Four 2. So whenever we do get that Fantastic Four sequel, which I should totally be one of the first movies that we get after Secret Wars, none of this, 6 or 7 years later bullshit before we get a sequel like they've done with Shang-Chi. Whenever we do get that sequel, in a lot of ways, I think it's going to be its own thing. That they don't need to feel the need to follow like some kind of like sequel structure. I think they can just tell a new story that might even feel like a fresh start in this new Marvel universe and like a first movie in its own right. And this family, Marvel's first family, they are going to be a big centerpiece, I would think, I would hope, to this new post-Secret Wars MCU. And I think it'll be interesting to see how they bring all these like different eras and universes into one cohesive reality come the end of Secret Wars, because the Fantastic Four in First Steps, they're coming from not only a different universe, but like a retro futuristic 1960s reality. But now they'll like all seemingly find themselves in a, like futuristic but modern universe when it's all like combined into one at the end of Secret Wars, and we have all of our MCU characters in one combined universe. So that alone will make the sequel very different from the original. And look, if the reports about the Russo brothers kind of taking over for the next saga post Secret Wars are true, if Feige does want them to stick around and help shepherd the overarching storyline of this next saga, maybe even allowing for Feige to take a promotion and move up to president of all Disney movie studios, like that would include Lucasfilm and Pixar, and then he could place the Russo brothers over Marvel Studios as his replacement, but still, and he'd be overseeing it as well, but he'd get to go play in Star Wars and Pixar as well, and he'd be able to let the day-to-day stuff go to the Russos and let them run it. That could be great, and that I could see that happening. So what would a Fantastic Four sequel look like, especially if this is a mutant saga that it's taking place in? Well, I think we could see Sue Storm back in her like activist type role. In the comics, her son Franklin is in fact a mutant, so he'll be directly involved with all of that. He has the mutant X gene, and that will probably, I think, be revealed in Doomsday. I think we are going to see Franklin in that X-Men universe. I think we're going to see Reed go after him. I think Reed will meet Beast. Kelsey Grammer, who plays Beast, has even said that he shared a scene with Pedro Pascal. So maybe we'll see a scene where like Beast or Xavier explain like, hey, your son, we picked up on his, whatever, as he was brought through the universe, and he has the mutant X gene, and explain what mutants are, and set that all up for the mutant saga. And to bring it back around to your initial question being about Ben, I think that with Ben, the thing being not a mutant, but a mutate, difference being that mutants are born mutants with the mutant X gene, while mutates are people who are born human and who are human but acquired their powers later on in life. But Ben Grimm, despite not being a mutant but a mutate, he would still know all about what it means to be different and to look different and to be stared at, and he'll have a lot in common, I think, with mutants, and he'll understand like the difference. Like some mutants can pass for human, like they're passing, human passing, but then there are other mutants who have like physical mutations and they can't pass, and that's like a divide in mutant kind. So I really hope that we get to hear like a conversation maybe in Doomsday between like the Thing and Beast about being these big monster looking dudes and trying to be accepted by society. That'd be so good. And, part of me is kind of hopeful that, as we talk about what Ben Grimm's future is going to be in a post-Secret Wars and the Fantastic Four sequel and all that, part of me is hopeful that maybe Kelsey Grammer will stick around as Beast. I mean, it's a mocap character, so there's really no reason that he couldn't play him for a while. Hell, he didn't even have to do the physical movements. He could just, sit down and do the lines and then mocap his face and have somebody else do the walking around. So I am kind of hopeful that maybe they'll keep him around for like a post Secret Wars X-Men movie that will have, you know, a whole new X-Men cast when it comes to the youngins. But I think we could keep OGs like Beast and maybe have, well, Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, I think they are totally done after Secret Wars. I mean, Jesus, they're both like getting into their 90s, but you could still keep their threat around by having like a Michael Fassbender and a James McAvoy come in to play Professor X and Magneto, because I don't see them bringing back all these original X-Men for Doomsday and Secret Wars just to say, okay, that's all, folks. We're rebooting entirely for the X-Men. We're keeping a lot of the other MCU characters. They're going to be in the new universe. They're coming back, but all the X-Men, whoosh. I think a lot of the X-Men, whoosh. But I think you keep some of those threads, especially when you have a McAvoy and a Fassbender. And what am I talking about? You asked about The Thing and the Fantastic Four sequel. My apologies. Thank you so much for your question, my friend, and thank you so much for being a channel member. I really appreciate it. All right. Hey everybody, Colton here, and this is the mailbag style show where I take your questions about Marvel, Star Wars, DC, movies and streaming in general. Whatever you want to ask, send it in to the email address askcoltonnow@gmail.com, and hey, maybe you'll see your question featured right here on the show.